What if the most dangerous letter in the royal family wasn't written in anger, but in perfect calm? And what if the silence that followed was louder than any denial ever could be? All right, stay with me on this, because this story doesn't explode all at once. It tightens, slowly, like a room losing oxygen. Clarence House, London, January 17th, 2026. Not a dramatic morning, no sirens, no shouting aides running down corridors. Just a sealed envelope placed carefully on a desk at exactly 7:48 a.m. The kind of timing that tells you this was planned, not emotional. Royal insignia on the front, heavy paper, formal weight. Inside, a message from a senior Saudi royal figure, diplomatic in language, sharp in intention. The accusation wasn't shouted, it was wrapped in courtesy, which somehow made it colder. A diamond earring set, allegedly worth somewhere between 400 and 500,000 pounds. The claim? That the jewelry was still in Meghan Markle's possession, that it had been obtained under the implied blessing of the British monarchy, and that restitution was expected immediately. Now, pause here, because this wasn't really about jewelry. This was about liability, about whether the crown itself could be dragged into a private transaction, about whether the monarchy's authority had been borrowed without permission. And within an hour, Clarence House was no longer quiet. Senior court officials, legal advisors, foreign policy aides. No leaks, no theatrics, just doors closing and phones silenced. By late morning, a reply was drafted, reviewed, edited, and personally signed off by King Charles himself. And this is the part that matters. The tone wasn't defensive, it wasn't angry, it was surgical. The message made one thing absolutely clear. The British Crown does not accept responsibility, legal or symbolic, for items never sanctioned, never logged, never entered into royal inventories. No authorization was given, no protocol was followed, no asset is held, and any suggestion of royal complicity must be formally withdrawn. This wasn't a rebuttal, it was a boundary. People inside Clarence House later described the king as composed, focused, almost clinical. No panic, no scrambling, just a careful redirection of responsibility away from the institution and toward the individual involved. And here's the quiet detail that says everything. The letter never mentioned Meghan Markle by name. Instead, it described the actions as entirely private, non-binding, detached from the sovereign. That wasn't denial, that was separation. And if Charles drew the legal line, Princess Anne delivered something else entirely. Because the day before that letter even arrived, Anne had already convened a closed-door meeting at Clarence House, January 16th, 2026, high level, no press, no briefing leaks. And in that room, according to multiple insiders, she said 8 words that landed like a dropped plate in a silent hall. The dossier exists, and we tried to warn him. Let that sit for a second, because this wasn't gossip, this wasn't tabloid noise. She was referring to a long-suspected intelligence file, compiled years earlier, between 2015 and 2017, allegedly detailing affiliations, travel patterns, introductions, and funding sources tied to Gulf elite circles. And inside palace walls, it was now being acknowledged as real. The contents, as described by those briefed, included appearances aboard luxury yachts docked in Antibes, Monaco, Istanbul, attendance at invite-only events financed by sovereign wealth, spending patterns that didn't align with a mid-level acting income, and then the detail that reframed everything. The diamond earrings worn at the 2018 Fiji state banquet, not sanctioned, not gifted by the crown, allegedly described as a farewell offering from a Saudi royal, symbolically marking a transition from one social world into another. No disclosure, no protocol, no request filed. Princess Anne's message, backed by legal counsel and security briefings, was blunt. This wasn't an oversight, it was appropriation, and the crown would not absorb the fallout. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable, because while all of this was unfolding, Meghan Markle said nothing. No statement, no lawyer response, no carefully worded media pushback. Nothing. And for someone known for fast strategic narrative control, that silence didn't read as calm, it read as containment. One palace source put it brutally: when a strategist goes quiet, it's not because they're thinking, it's because they've run out of exits. And then there was Harry. By midday on the 17th, multiple insiders confirmed he had withdrawn completely inside the Montecito estate. Upper-level library, curtains drawn, no calls returned, no meals taken. 14 hours of silence. Staff observed Meghan staying in a separate wing. One former royal aide described Harry's state as something closer to shock than anger, like someone realizing the battle he'd been fighting might never have been the one he was told it was. Because those 8 words from Anne weren't just administrative, they detonated something personal. The dossier exists, and we tried to warn him. For years, Harry had believed warnings were jealousy, resistance, old-world fear of change. Now he was confronted with something else entirely. Intelligence briefings prepared before the wedding, sealed, archived, validated. Not rumor, not press, files. Flight logs, yacht manifests, spending trails, and references to a facilitator in Gulf circles who allegedly orchestrated introductions, including the one that changed everything. Inside Charles's protection team, one officer was overheard saying, "He's not just angry, he's heartbroken. He thought he was protecting her." And then, almost quietly, Marcus Anderson's digital presence vanished. Accounts gone, no statements, no defense. If you're enjoying this breakdown, take a second to like the video. It helps more than you think. And yeah, subscribe if you want more deep dives like this, because the story didn't stop with the palace. The Tyler Perry rupture changed everything. For months, the monarchy had stayed above Hollywood noise. Netflix deals, podcast cancellations, all of it treated as private fallout. But when Perry reportedly severed ties over failed repayment plans and mounting embarrassments, it crossed a line. This wasn't gossip. This was money and reputation. Internally, the palace flagged a pattern: elite allies drawn in, public alignment, then quiet collapse. Oprah, Serena, Ellen, now Perry. By January 2026, King Charles authorized what insiders called a reputational defense memo. It instructed full separation between working royals and the Sussex brand. No joint mentions, no charity overlap, no implied endorsement. Institutional exile without a press release. Princess Anne moved faster. On January 14th, she presented a credibility audit linking unpaid invoices, text exchanges, and misleading public narratives tied to the Perry fallout. Her assessment was blunt. This was no longer family. This was strategic reputation laundering. Behind the scenes, palace media teams began correcting any implication that Perry had ever been an official royal ally. His help, they stressed, was personal, not institutional. William reportedly backed Anne fully. One quote attributed to him circulated internally: "You don't get to burn every bridge and blame the weather." And then the number hit. Perry's team allegedly prepared civil action totaling over £6 million, security costs, property repairs, retroactive liabilities. Online sentiment flipped fast. Hashtags, screenshots, side-by-side comparisons of luxury wardrobes and unpaid claims. Anne's reaction, according to one aide, a nod. Good. Charles remained still, but in one internal meeting, he reportedly said if she thought Perry was the last shield, she misjudged her castle. Back in California, Harry unraveled. Calls to William unanswered, messages to Charles returned only through aides. Even Anne stopped responding. The mansion that once symbolized escape became a liability. Archwell shrank to crisis management. Planned launches quietly vanished. And the palace did nothing. No rebuttals, no leaks, no rescue. Anne's strategy was simple: let them run out of oxygen. By late January, legal notices escalated, figures climbed, documentation leaked, and one Perry quote dominated headlines. "I didn't offer a palace, I offered protection. I didn't know I'd need protection from them." And that's when things froze. Netflix projects quietly canceled, Spotify content delisted, Hollywood doors closed without announcements. In the UK, the palace clarified one thing publicly: no crown funds were ever used for Montecito, no grants, no royal property. Translation: don't expect a bailout. William reportedly told advisors, "This isn't about repair, it's about refusal."